The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. The key that opens the bottomless pit, the portal, is why the Vatican's symbol is keys, which is why it was the Francis Scott Key Bridge that collapsed, because Pope Francis is the Antichrist at the Vatican that will use the key described in Revelation 9:11 to open the bottomless pit portal to the fallen angels. Pope Francis was one of the biggest critics of Trump's plan to build a wall of security, as in, by the way, the wall of security between the demonic realm and the earthly realm that will be opened with a key. Okay, so Pope Francis was one of the biggest critics of Trump's plan to build a wall of security during Trump's election campaign. When Trump visited the Pope at the Vatican after he was elected, he complimented the Vatican's wall of security. This was 2 days after Trump became the first sitting president to visit the Western Wall in Old Jerusalem, which in turn was exactly 50 months after a freak sandstorm out of Saudi Arabia, the home of the spiritual enemy, Islam, forced Obama to drive through the wall of security between Jerusalem and the West Bank instead of taking his helicopter. In the Bible, the walls of security of Jericho collapsed on Pentecost, and Pentecost means 50th day. The Israelites were led by Joshua when the walls of Jericho collapsed, and Trump is a type for Joshua. Before the walls of security collapsed on Jericho, the Israelites enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7. I'm just going to play a quick clip explaining this symbolism, and I'll be right back. President Trump is God's trumpet that he uses to highlight and confirm his signs. The word trump in archaic English means trumpet or the sounding of a trumpet. Donald Trump was born on a Sabbath day, and the portion of Torah that was read in synagogues on the day that Trump was born was the passage from the book of Numbers, in which God commanded the making of trumpets. Trump was born exactly 23 months, which happens to be exactly 700 days, before Israel was reborn. And God used Trump in prophetic signs regarding the restoration of Israel. Donald Trump chose his running mate, Mike Pence, and their 2 names, Trump-Pence, hints at trumpets. Trump's presidency, including his election campaign, was synonymous with his border wall of security. Before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment on ancient Jericho, the Hebrews blew trumpets. Before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment on the ancient city of Jericho, the Hebrews marched around Jericho's walls of security 7 times over 7 days, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. This was a 3 sets of 7. In the book of Revelation, which describes God's judgment in the end times period, there are also 3 sets of 7 judgments. When the Hebrews blew the trumpets at Jericho, it was an announcement from God of judgment on the city of Jericho. Likewise, President Trump's presidency was an announcement of judgment on the nation of America, God's Gentile nation and the only other nation in history besides Israel that was founded on a relationship with God. This is why President Trump's election campaign and presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security, and why on the first day of his presidency, on Inauguration Day, President Trump was exactly 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old, which was 3 sets of 7 and paralleled the 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua. Through the symbolic very beginning of Trump's presidency, God announced judgment on the nation. Joshua, the leader of the Hebrews, led them around the walls of security 7 times over 7 days, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. On the day that President Trump was elected by 77 electoral votes, the leader of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, had been in power for exactly 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days. Okay, so we have this connection between Pope Francis and the collapse of a wall, right? And Pope Francis being from the Vatican, which is symbolized by keys, which is a hint at the key that will open the bottomless pit. Okay, the wall of security between the demonic realm and the earthly realm. Now, again, what we have here is the 50 months connection between Trump visiting the Western Wall, the first president, and the anti-Israel president, Obama, driving through the wall of security between Jerusalem and the West Bank when he went to Bethlehem, which is because Obama will be the Antichrist that will lead to the fall of the security in Jerusalem. Okay, so what we have, though, also is this Jericho symbolism, because the walls of security of Jericho collapsed on Pentecost, which means 50th day. And by the way, God demonstrated this with his prophetic signs in 2018, 19, and 20. It's not a question. The timing of events in the book of Joshua paralleled these signs and these trails of signs that led to Pentecost. This was foundational in 2018 in demonstrating trails of signs furthermore, which is how God's big picture of signs works. But that was, a beginning to this understanding regarding trails of signs. God developed these trails of signs that paralleled the timing of the events of the book of Joshua. And then these trails of signs led to Pentecost, the climax, when the walls of security collapsed. So from this, we can deduce that the walls of security definitely collapsed on Pentecost. Okay? And because the other events in the timing parallel the Omer count and things like this, okay? So, all right. So the Israelites were led by Joshua when the walls of Jericho collapsed, and Trump is a type for Joshua, because the Israelites, for one thing, blew trumpets before the walls of security collapsed. Before the walls of security collapsed on Jericho, the Israelites enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7. 2,773 is the 777th semi-prime number. Trump visited Pope Francis in Rome and complimented his wall of security 2,773 days, as in 777, before Francis opened the portal door of a prison in Rome on December 26, 2024. At the time, Trump was in the news for telling the prisoners that had their death sentences commuted by Biden to, quote unquote, go to hell. Francis knocked at the door portal 6 times, and this was the day that 6 people died or were killed in the IDF attack on the Yemen airport. This was the anniversary of the tsunami that reached Yemen 6 hours after the earthquake and caused the death of one 7-year-old. Trump is predicted to die. Trump has been, symbolism for 7, is predicted to die 6 days after Pope Francis knocked at the prison door 6 times.